Hello, Revolve Bible Church. Welcome to 5 Minute Connect. This is the second installment of Singing in the Storm, a special series of 5 Minute Connect that we're doing through Ephesians chapter 1, verses 3 through 14. The first installment that I published yesterday, you can find in the link down below, as we're seeing Paul singing in a storm of his life. Beginning in verse 3, he's ascribing praise to God over the spiritual blessing of salvation that has come into his life in Christ, that he is not cursed, the opposite of a blessing, because he's in Christ. Jesus was cursed in his place, and thus Paul becomes in Christ a recipient of goodness, kindness, and blessing. But he goes on. The song continues. The lyrics progress as we move into verses 4 through 6 as he talks about the blessing of election. Now, to be honest here, this is probably a part of a song that many Christians even would rather bleep out than belt out. They would rather not talk about election, not embrace the doctrine of election, but that is just tragic. Because the doctrine of election is a heartwarming doctrine. The fact that God has chosen us in Christ is something that should greatly encourage us in the storm that we're presently in. It encouraged Paul. That's why he was writing it and singing it in his heart to God, because he was rejoicing over it, and it should cause us to rejoice as well. When we think about being chosen, really this word here just literally means for God to select particular individuals to be saved. Before the foundations of the world, we see God making this choice with his electing love. Now, when we think about election in our day and age and culture, we think about being picked because we achieved it and we earned it. You don't get picked in our society, in our world, without having earned it. From the playground, on the sports teams, you get picked because you're the best on the team. To the political realm, you get elected because of the achievements and the accomplishments, the repertoire that you have of life accomplishments in your career. But it's not so with God. You see, when it comes to God choosing, he does not choose those who deserve it or who have earned it. But because we've all sinned and we've all fallen short of the glory of God, what we deserve is hell. What we deserve is to be punished under the wrath of God for eternity. But by the grace of God, the unmerited favor of God, he has chosen some. Out of the raging rapid to hell, he has plucked some out to save them through his Son, Jesus Christ. And not just to save them, but we find here, beginning in verse 4, he did choose some undeservedly to make them holy and blameless before him. But it goes on in verse 5 to say that he chose us not just to perfect us and make us like his Son, but he chose us to adopt us, that we may belong to him forever, to be in his family as his son and as his daughter. But he even goes on to say in verse 6, God chose us not just to perfectly sanctify us, to adopt us into his family, but to be agents who proclaim the grace and the goodness of God to the masses. He says in verse 6, to the praise of the glory of his grace, which he freely bestowed on us in the beloved. God has chosen you and I to be those who are not shy about being saved, are not ashamed about being saved, but who are bold and who are outspoken out of gratitude in our heart for our great God in blessing us by causing us to be in his family forever. So as we're in the storm of our life right now, would we be not ashamed of being chosen by God when we deserve to inherit hell, the eternal lake of fire? But would we be, like Paul, those who shout the grace of God on the rooftops, pointing all the people that are in our life to the God of grace. Blessing.